The sound of my 8-year-old daughter Emma's footsteps running away from our dining room table still echoes in my mind. One moment she was proudly showing her bright purple hearing aids to the family. The next she was fleeing in tears after my sister Jessica cupped her hands around her ears and said in a robotic voice, "Beep, beep. Does not compute robot ears malfunction." My dad Thomas burst into laughter, slapping his knee like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. When I started to protest, he waved me off with that dismissive gesture I knew too well. "Come on, Cal, it's just a joke. Lighten up." I stood there, frozen, my mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, when my wife Sarah quietly rose from her chair, walked to our front door and opened it wide without saying a single word. I need to take you back to understand how we got here, because what happened that Sunday wasn't some spontaneous moment of poor judgment. It was the culmination of something much darker that had been brewing in my family for years. Emma lost her hearing when she was 6 years old. Bacterial meningitis almost took her life, and when she recovered, we discovered the infection had damaged her inner ear. The doctors explained that without hearing aids, Emma would live in a world of muffled sounds and missed conversations. Sarah and I were devastated, but Emma faced it with the kind of courage that puts adults to shame. The journey to getting her hearing aids took 2 years of appointments, tests, insurance battles, and speech therapy sessions. I watched my little girl work harder than most adults I know, learning to navigate a world that suddenly sounded different. She practiced pronouncing words for hours, celebrated every small victory, and never once complained about the bulky devices she had to wear behind her ears. When Emma first got her hearing aids, she was so excited she wanted to show everyone. They were bright purple because, as she told the audiologist, purple is the color of brave princesses. But when Jessica saw them, her face twisted into this expression of disgust I'll never forget. She pulled me aside and whispered, "Now she really looks disabled. This is going to be hard on the whole family." That comment should have been my first warning. Over the following months, Jessica made subtle digs during family gatherings. She'd speak extra slowly to Emma like she was mentally impaired. She'd position herself so Emma couldn't see her lips when she talked, knowing Emma relied partially on lip reading. When Emma asked her to repeat something, Jessica would sigh dramatically and say things like, "Never mind, it wasn't important anyway." But today was different. Today, Jessica had crossed a line I didn't even know existed. As I stood in my kitchen watching Sarah hold that door open, Jessica's voice cut through the silence. "What's the big deal, Cal? I was just trying to lighten the mood. Emma needs to learn that the world isn't going to coddle her forever." Then came the revelation that made my blood run cold. "Besides," Jessica continued, adjusting her designer blouse with that smug expression she wore when she thought she was being clever, "Dad and I have been talking about this for months. We think all this special treatment is making Emma weak. She needs to toughen up." Months they had been planning this. Thomas nodded approvingly from his spot at our dining table, still wearing that stupid grin. "Your sister's right, son. When I was growing up, kids with problems like Emma's didn't get all these fancy gadgets. They learned to deal with their limitations, built character." I felt something break inside my chest. This wasn't a moment of poor judgment or a bad joke. This was a calculated attack on my daughter, planned and executed by the two people who were supposed to love and protect her most after Sarah and me. Sarah stood at that open door like a guardian angel, her hand never wavering from the brass doorknob. She teaches special education at Lincoln Elementary, and I realized in that moment that she had recognized what was happening long before I did. She had seen this kind of systematic cruelty before, and she wasn't going to let it continue in our home. Emma was hiding behind the kitchen counter now, her small fingers tracing the outline of her hearing aids. She had taken them out and was staring at them like they had betrayed her somehow. The sight of my daughter questioning the very things that helped her hear the world around her because of my family's cruelty made something fundamental shift inside me. The tension in our small suburban home became suffocating. Sarah maintained her position at the open front door, her back straight and her chin raised in quiet defiance. She hadn't spoken a word since Jessica's robot voice mockery, but her message was crystal clear. The cool October air drifted through our entryway, carrying the scent of burning leaves and the distant sound of neighborhood children playing. Thomas's face was turning that familiar shade of red I remembered from my childhood. He pushed his chair back from our oak dining table with enough force to make the good china rattle. "Now just 1 minute," he growled, pointing a thick finger at Sarah. "I don't know what kind of household you think you're running here, but in my day, wives didn't disrespect their husbands' families like this." I watched my father's transformation from disappointed grandfather to angry patriarch happen in real time. This was the man who had raised me with an iron fist and the belief that family loyalty trumped everything, including basic human decency. The man who taught me that showing emotion was weakness and that challenging authority was rebellion that needed to be crushed. Jessica positioned herself behind Thomas like she was rallying troops for battle. Her perfectly manicured nails drummed against her leather purse as she spoke. "Sarah, this is completely inappropriate. We're family. We should be able to joke around without you throwing some kind of feminist tantrum." The word feminist dripped from her lips like it was something dirty she needed to spit out. Jessica had always resented Sarah's quiet confidence and professional success. As a special education teacher, Sarah commanded respect in our community. She had helped dozens of children like Emma navigate their challenges with grace and strength. Jessica, on the other hand, had built her real estate career on fake smiles and cutthroat competition. Emma crept closer to where I stood, pressing herself against my leg. I could feel her small body trembling, and I realized she was waiting for me to choose sides. Her 8-year-old mind was processing whether her daddy would protect her or prioritize keeping peace with his birth family. Our other dinner guests sat frozen in uncomfortable silence. Aunt Marie Thomas's 70-year-old sister stared at her plate of untouched roast beef like it held answers to life's mysteries. My cousin Derek, Jessica's 23-year-old son, held his phone in his lap and kept glancing between the adults like he was watching a tennis match. "Cal." Thomas's voice carried the weight of every lecture he had ever given me about duty and respect. "You need to get your wife under control. This behavior is unacceptable. Tell her to close that door and apologize to your sister right now." The demand hung in the air like smoke from a fire that was about to consume everything I thought I knew about family loyalty. Thomas wasn't asking me to mediate or find compromise. He was ordering me to choose between supporting my wife and daughter or maintaining his version of family hierarchy. I glanced at Sarah, still standing sentinel at our front door. Her brown hair caught the afternoon sunlight streaming through our windows, and I noticed she was wearing the blue sweater I had bought her for her birthday. The one Emma had helped me pick out because she said it matched Mommy's eyes. Sarah's hands were steady, her breathing calm, but I could see the fire burning behind her gentle exterior. This was the woman who had spent countless nights helping Emma with speech exercises, who had researched every possible hearing aid option until she found ones that would give our daughter the best possible chance at a normal life, who had held Emma during the difficult early days when the hearing aids felt foreign and uncomfortable. Thomas took a step toward Sarah, his heavy work boots making our hardwood floors creak ominously. "I'm talking to you, young lady. Your husband asked you a question." But I hadn't asked Sarah anything. I had been standing there like a statue, paralyzed between the family that raised me and the family I was raising. Emma's grip on my leg tightened, and I felt her small voice against my hip. "Daddy, are you going to make Mommy say sorry for protecting me, Mummy?" That question cut through my paralysis like a blade. My daughter was asking whether I would force the woman who loved her most to apologize for defending her from cruelty. She was asking whether her father valued keeping peace over keeping her safe. The neighbors had started to notice our situation. Mrs. Patterson from next door was working in her garden, but I could see her glancing toward our open front door with concern. The Johnson family across the street had slowed their evening walk to observe what was clearly becoming a family crisis playing out for the whole neighborhood to witness. Thomas followed my gaze, and his expression darkened further. "Now look what you've done," he hissed at Sarah. "You're making a spectacle of this family. Close that door before the whole neighborhood thinks we're some kind of dysfunctional mess." Derek finally spoke up, his young voice uncertain but brave. "Grandpa, maybe you should mind your own business," Jessica snapped at her son. "This is between the adults." But Derek didn't back down. "Emma's just a little kid, Mom. She didn't do anything wrong." Jessica's face flushed with embarrassment at being challenged by her own child. "Derek, stay out of this. You don't understand the bigger picture." The bigger picture. That phrase revealed everything I needed to know about how my sister viewed my daughter's disability. Emma wasn't a precious granddaughter who needed love and support. She was an inconvenience that reflected poorly on the family image Jessica was trying to maintain. Thomas stepped closer to Sarah, close enough that his intimidation tactics should have worked. But Sarah didn't flinch. She had faced down aggressive parents in her classroom, dealt with administrators who didn't want to fund special needs programs, and advocated for children who couldn't advocate for themselves. My father's bluster didn't scare her. "You have 30 seconds to close that door and apologize," Thomas announced like he was delivering an ultimatum from on high. "Or Cal here is going to have to choose between his birth family and whatever this nonsense is." Whatever this nonsense is. He was referring to my wife's defense of our daughter as nonsense. The protection of an 8-year-old girl from emotional abuse was nonsense in Thomas's worldview. I realized I was holding my breath, and so was everyone else in that room. This was the moment everything would change one way or another. Sarah's quiet strength had forced a confrontation that had been years in the making, and there was no going back to pretending everything was fine. Emma looked up at me with those trusting eyes that had seen too much cruelty for one afternoon. "Daddy, my hearing aids help me hear love. Why don't they want me to hear love?" Her innocent question shattered whatever remaining loyalty I felt to maintaining family peace at the expense of family love. Thomas reached toward Sarah's arm like he intended to physically move her away from the door. That's when something primal awakened inside me. No one was going to put their hands on my wife, especially not to force her into apologizing for protecting our child. "Don't touch her," I said, stepping forward for the first time since this nightmare began. Thomas froze, his hand suspended in midair. He looked at me with genuine shock, like he couldn't believe his son had just drawn a line in the sand. In 32 years, I had never directly challenged him. I had been the obedient son who swallowed his opinions, avoided conflict, and prioritized family harmony over personal conviction. But Jessica, sensing that her carefully orchestrated intervention was falling apart, made a critical mistake. In her desperation to regain control of the narrative, she revealed something that changed everything. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, her voice rising to that shrill pitch it reached when she wasn't getting her way. "Emma needs to stop using those hearing aids as an excuse for special treatment. I already told her teacher and some of her classmates that she's just pretending to need them for attention. Maybe if she didn't use them to get sympathy at school all the time." The words hung in the air like a confession at a murder trial. Jessica had just admitted to sabotaging Emma's relationships at school. She had been poisoning my daughter's social life behind our backs. My mind raced backward through the past few months. Emma's tears after school, her reluctance to invite friends over for play dates, the concerned phone call from her teacher about Emma seeming withdrawn and isolated, her heartbreaking question last week about whether kids would like her better if she looked more normal. I had attributed all of these changes to Emma adjusting to her hearing aids and the natural social dynamics of elementary school. I never imagined that my own sister was actively working to undermine my daughter's confidence and friendships. "What did you just say?" Sarah's voice cut through the room like ice. These were the first words she had spoken since opening the door, and they carried the weight of a mother's fury. Jessica's eyes widened as she realized her slip, but it was too late to take back the confession. I just meant that sometimes kids exaggerate their problems for attention. And you told Emma's classmates that she was faking her hearing loss. Sarah's voice remained calm, but I could see the storm building behind her controlled exterior. Derek's phone clattered to the floor as the full scope of his mother's cruelty became clear. Mom, you did what? Aunt Marie finally looked up from her plate, her elderly face pale with shock. Jessica, surely you didn't. I was trying to help, Jessica said defensively, but her voice had lost its earlier confidence. Emma was getting all this special attention from teachers sitting in the front of the classroom, getting extra time on tests. The other kids were starting to notice, and I thought, you thought you'd destroy an 8-year-old's reputation to prove some twisted point about fairness, Sarah asked, her teaching voice emerging. This was the tone she used with parents who neglected their children's needs or administrators who tried to cut special education funding. Thomas, realizing that Jessica had revealed something indefensible, tried to redirect the conversation. Now, hold on, let's not blow this out of proportion. Out of proportion. I found my voice at last, and it came out stronger than I expected. My sister has been telling people that my daughter is faking a disability. She's been sabotaging Emma's friendships and undermining her confidence. How exactly is that in proportion? This was the moment I finally understood what Sarah had recognized from the beginning. This wasn't a family disagreement about discipline or child-rearing philosophies. This was a systematic emotional abuse disguised as concern. Emma stepped out from behind my leg, her small hands clutching her purple hearing aids. She looked directly at Jessica with a maturity that broke my heart. Aunt Jessica, these aren't pretend. When I take them out, everything sounds like it's underwater. They help me hear Daddy's bedtime stories and Mommy's songs and my friends at school. Why did you tell people they're not real? The simplicity and honesty of Emma's question exposed the cruelty of Jessica's actions in a way that no adult argument could. Here was a child asking why her aunt had chosen to hurt her instead of help her. Jessica's face crumpled as she realized she had no reasonable answer. Emma, sweetie, I was just… Don't, Sarah commanded, taking a protective step toward Emma. Don't you dare try to manipulate her now. Thomas, desperate to salvage the situation, made his own critical error. This whole conversation is getting out of hand. Cal, if you can't control your wife and daughter, maybe it's time for some tough decisions about what kind of influence they're having on this family. The threat was unmistakable. Choose them or choose us. But Thomas had miscalculated badly. He had just threatened my wife and child in my own home after my sister had confessed to psychologically tormenting my daughter. Derek suddenly spoke up, his voice shaking with emotion. Grandpa Mom asked me to record Emma acting weird so she could show people what she meant about the attention-seeking behavior. Another bombshell. Jessica had enlisted her own son in documenting Emma's supposed behavioral problems. Derek, be quiet, Jessica hissed, but the damage was done. No, Mom. I deleted everything because Emma wasn't acting weird. She was just being a normal kid who happened to wear hearing aids. You made me feel like I was spying on a little girl who never did anything wrong. Derek's confession revealed the full scope of Jessica's campaign against Emma. This wasn't random cruelty or thoughtless comments. This was a coordinated effort to prove that Emma was damaged goods who reflected poorly on the family reputation. Aunt Marie stood slowly from her chair, her arthritis making the movement painful. Jessica, what have you done? That child is an angel. She's not normal. Jessica burst out, her composure finally cracking completely. Look at her. Look at those things on her head. She's going to need special help for the rest of her life. She's going to be a burden on Cal and Sarah and eventually on all of us. I was trying to help everyone face reality. The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica had finally said what she really believed, that Emma was a burden who diminished the family rather than enriched it. Emma looked up at me with those wise, innocent eyes. Daddy, am I really a burden? That question from my 8-year-old daughter was the final straw that broke my paralysis forever. No, sweetheart, I said, kneeling down to Emma's level and gently helping her put her hearing aids back in. You are the best thing that ever happened to our family. And anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve to be in our home. Aunt Marie stepped forward, her voice trembling with emotion. Cal, there's something else you need to know. I've been staying quiet too long and I can't bear it anymore. Thomas turned toward his sister with alarm. Marie, don't. No, Thomas. I'm done protecting your feelings while you hurt this precious child. Marie's voice grew stronger with each word. Last month, I overheard you and Jessica on the phone planning this whole intervention. You weren't just talking about teasing Emma or toughening her up. You were researching special residential schools to send her away to. The room went dead silent. Even the sounds from outside seemed muted. You were planning to what? Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Marie looked at me with tears in her elderly eyes. Thomas called them institutes for defective children. He said families like yours needed to make hard choices about keeping disabled children at home versus doing what was best for everyone. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. My father had been researching ways to get rid of my daughter. That's not exactly what we discussed, Thomas said, but his voice lacked conviction. We were just looking into all available options for Emma's future care. Future care. Sarah stepped away from the door for the first time, moving toward Thomas with the controlled fury of a mother bear protecting her cub. She's 8 years old. She doesn't need care. She needs love support and hearing aids, just like millions of other children. Jessica tried to salvage the situation one more time. We were thinking about what would be best for Emma in the long run. These special schools have trained professionals who understand her specific needs better than her parents, I interrupted. Better than her mother, who has a master's degree in special education. Better than the audiologist and speech therapist who have been working with her for 2 years. Derek was staring at his mother with undisguised horror. Mom, you wanted to send Emma away. She's my cousin. She's family. She's damaged goods, Jessica snapped at her son. And if Cal and Sarah can't handle the responsibility, then yes, she needs professional care. Emma stepped closer to me, her small hand finding mine. Daddy, what does damaged goods mean? Before I could answer, Derek knelt down next to Emma. It means absolutely nothing, Emma. Your mom doesn't know what she's talking about. You're perfect exactly as you are. Jessica whirled on her son. Derek, you're 23 years old. You don't understand the complexity of raising a special needs child or the financial burden it places on a family. Special needs. Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. Emma needs hearing aids and occasional speech therapy. She's an honor roll student who loves art and soccer. She has friends, hobbies, and dreams just like every other child. The only special need she has is protection from relatives who see her as defective. Thomas made one final attempt to maintain his authority. This conversation is over. Cal, you need to decide whether you're going to be part of this family or not. If you choose to prioritize political correctness over family loyalty, then you can deal with Emma's problems on your own. Don't come crying to us when the expenses pile up and the responsibility becomes overwhelming. The ultimatum was laid bare. Accept their view of Emma as damaged goods or lose my birth family forever. But something had fundamentally changed inside me during this conversation. I was looking at these people who had raised me and realizing I barely knew them at all. The man I had called Dad my entire life saw my beautiful daughter as defective merchandise. The sister I had grown up with had actively worked to destroy an 8-year-old's self-esteem and social relationships. Actually, I said, standing up and putting my arm around Sarah's shoulders, I think you've made the choice for me. Emma is not a burden or damaged goods. She's my daughter and she's perfect. If you can't accept that, then you're not the family I thought you were. Emma looked up at me with pride shining in her eyes. Daddy does this mean the mean people have to leave? Yes, sweetheart. The mean people have to leave. Thomas's face turned purple with rage. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life, son. When reality hits and you need help dealing with her problems, don't expect us to be there. I wouldn't dream of asking for help from people who see my daughter as a problem to be solved rather than a child to be loved," I replied. Jessica gathered her purse and coat with sharp, angry movements. "Fine. But don't blame us when Emma's disabilities hold back your entire family. Don't blame us when Derek's future children have to deal with the genetic consequences of your selfish choices." Derek stood up abruptly. "Mom, I'm not leaving with you." Jessica turned to her son in shock. "What did you say?" "I said I'm not leaving. I'm staying here with Uncle Cal and Emma and Aunt Sarah. What you've done is cruel and unforgivable, and I want no part of it." "Derek, you're my son. You'll get in that car right now." "No, Mom. I'm an adult, and I choose to stay with family who actually loves and protects each other." Aunt Marie stepped forward as well. "Jessica Thomas, I'm ashamed to be related to you right now. What you've done to this child is monstrous." Thomas looked around the room and realized he had lost everyone except Jessica. His intimidation tactics had backfired spectacularly, turning his own family against him. "This isn't over," he warned as he headed toward the door that Sarah still held open. "You'll regret choosing outsiders over your own blood." "Blood doesn't make family," I replied. "Love does. And there's no love in what you've done here today." As Thomas and Jessica stalked out of our house, Emma tugged on my shirt. "Daddy, are they really not our family anymore?" I looked down at my brave, beautiful daughter with her bright purple hearing aids catching the afternoon sunlight. "We're your family, Emma. Me, Mommy Derek, and Aunt Marie. We're the people who love you exactly as you are." Emma smiled and put her hearing aids back in with a flourish. "Good. Now I can hear all the love again." As Thomas and Jessica reached their car, I made a decision that would change everything. While they argued in our driveway about Derek's refusal to leave with them, I pulled out my phone and showed Sarah the screen. "I've been recording since Jessica first made that robot voice at Emma," I said quietly. Sarah's eyes widened. The whole conversation. Every cruel word, every admission about sabotaging Emma's school relationships, every threat about sending her away, all of it. Derek overheard and moved closer. "Uncle Cal, are you going to do something with that recording?" I looked at Emma, who was helping Aunt Marie clear the dinner table like nothing catastrophic had just happened. My daughter's resilience in the face of such cruelty strengthened my resolve. Jessica's built her real estate career on being a trusted member of this community. Thomas volunteers with the Veterans Organization and chairs the Neighborhood Association. They care more about their reputations than they do about Emma's well-being. Maybe it's time the community knew who they really are. Sarah nodded slowly. "You know, I've been documenting concerning behaviors for weeks now. I actually called Child Protective Services yesterday to create a record of the emotional abuse patterns I was observing." "You did what?" I stared at my wife in amazement. "I'm a mandated reporter, Cal. When I see systematic emotional abuse of a child, I have a legal obligation to document it. I've been watching Jessica's behavior escalate for months, and I knew something like today was coming." Derek looked conflicted. "I have videos on my phone too. Mom asked me to record Emma acting weird, but when I watched them later, Emma was just being a normal, happy kid. I felt so guilty about participating in whatever Mom was planning." Through our front window, we could see Thomas and Jessica in heated argument beside his pickup truck. Jessica was gesturing wildly, probably trying to convince Thomas that the family rift could be repaired if they just waited for me to come to my senses. Mrs. Patterson from next door approached our front yard, clearly concerned about the shouting match happening in our driveway. She knocked on our door gently. "Cal, Sarah, is everything all right? We heard raised voices and wanted to make sure Emma was okay." Mrs. Patterson was a retired elementary school teacher who had taught in our district for 40 years. She knew good families from troubled ones, and her concern for Emma's welfare was genuine. "Actually, Mrs. Patterson, There's something you should know about what just happened here, Sarah said, inviting her inside. I made a decision in that moment that felt both terrifying and liberating. Mrs. Patterson, would you like to hear exactly how my father and sister talk about children with disabilities when they think no one is holding them accountable? Over the next 20 minutes, Mrs. Patterson listened to the recording with growing horror and disgust. When it finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Cal, I've known your father for 15 years through the neighborhood association. He presents himself as a man of strong moral character. This recording reveals something entirely different. What should I do with it? I asked. Mrs. Patterson looked at Emma, who was coloring at our kitchen table with Derek's help. Honey, what your family did to that precious child today was psychological abuse. In my professional opinion, the community needs to know who these people really are, especially given their positions of trust and authority. Derek spoke up hesitantly. Uncle Cal, I recorded some of today's conversation too before I realized how wrong it all was. If you're going to expose what they did, you should have all the evidence. Derek, are you sure Jessica is your mother? Derek looked at Emma, then back at me. She stopped being my mother the moment she decided to torture a little kid for having hearing aids. I've been watching her bully Emma for months, and I was too much of a coward to stop it. I won't be a coward anymore. Sarah sat down at our computer and began typing. I'm posting this on every local parent Facebook group, the Neighborhood Association page, and sending copies to Thomas's Veterans Organization and Jessica's real estate broker. Are you sure we should go this far? I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. Aunt Marie, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke. Cal, your father has been a bully his entire life. He's hidden it behind authority and family loyalty, but he's damaged everyone he's supposed to love. It's time for people to see who he really is. Marie, he's your brother, I said. He's a man who wanted to institutionalize his 8-year-old granddaughter because her hearing aids embarrassed him. Blood doesn't excuse that kind of evil. Emma looked up from her coloring book. Daddy, are you going to tell people what Aunt Jessica and Grandpa Thomas said about me? Would that be okay with you, sweetheart? Emma nodded solemnly. Other kids with hearing aids might have mean families too. If people know that being mean to kids like me is wrong, maybe it will help other kids. Her wisdom and concern for other children in similar situations made my decision final. Sarah, post everything. Within minutes, Sarah had uploaded the audio files along with a detailed explanation of what had transpired in our home. She included information about Emma's hearing loss, the medical necessity of her hearing aids, and the psychological impact of family members undermining a disabled child's confidence and social relationships. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Comments began appearing faster than we could read them. Parent after parent expressed outrage at Thomas and Jessica's behavior. Many shared their own stories of family members who had struggled to accept their children's disabilities. Derek's phone started buzzing with notifications. My mom is calling and texting nonstop. She's figured out that the recording is going viral. Through our window, we could see Thomas and Jessica still in our driveway, but now they were both staring at their phones in apparent panic. Mrs. Patterson stood to leave. Cal, I'm going to share this with my former colleagues in the school district. Teachers need to be aware of this kind of family dynamic so they can better protect children like Emma. As the afternoon turned to evening, our home filled with an unexpected peace. Derek helped Emma with a puzzle, while Aunt Marie shared stories about her own childhood experiences with Thomas's bullying behavior. Sarah and I watched our daughter laugh and play, completely recovered from the morning's trauma. She's resilient, Sarah observed. She's stronger than any of us, I agreed, and she's going to grow up knowing that her parents will always choose her well-being over keeping peace with people who want to hurt her. My phone rang. It was Thomas. Cal, you need to take down whatever Sarah posted on the internet. This is family business, and you're destroying reputations over a simple misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding, Dad. It was systematic emotional abuse of my daughter, and the community deserves to know the truth about who you and Jessica really are. If you don't remove those posts, there will be consequences. I have influence in this town and I can make things difficult for you and Sarah. Are you threatening me? I'm promising you that this decision will cost you more than you realize. I looked at Emma safely surrounded by people who loved and protected her. Dad, the only thing this decision has cost me is a relationship with people who see my daughter as damaged goods. That's a price I'm happy to pay. I hung up the phone and turned it off. Whatever consequences Thomas thought he could impose, they were nothing compared to the consequences of allowing Emma to grow up believing her own family saw her as defective. I woke up the next morning to my phone buzzing with dozens of missed calls and text messages. The story of what happened at our family dinner had spread far beyond our local community overnight. Parent advocacy groups had shared Sarah's post. Disability rights organizations had picked it up, and it was being discussed on morning radio shows across the state. The first call I returned was from Derek, who was staying at Aunt Marie's house. "Uncle Cal, you're not going to believe what's happened. Grandpa Thomas got suspended from his volunteer position at the Veterans Center. The board of directors held an emergency meeting last night after they heard the recording." "How do you know that?" "Because he called Mom screaming about it at 6 this morning, and she called me crying about how their lives are being destroyed by internet bullying." Derek's voice carried no sympathy for his mother's distress. "Uncle Cal, 3 of Mom's real estate clients have already fired her. Her broker wants to meet with her this morning to discuss whether she's still a good fit for the agency." I felt a mixture of satisfaction and concern. The consequences were swift and severe, but they were also natural results of Thomas and Jessica's own words and actions. Sarah emerged from Emma's bedroom where she had been helping our daughter get ready for school. Emma's teacher called. "The principal wants to meet with us this morning to discuss providing additional support for Emma after what happened." Additional support? The school district received dozens of calls from parents who heard the recording. They want to make sure Emma feels safe and supported at school, and they're implementing new anti-bullying protocols specifically around disability harassment. Emma bounded into the kitchen wearing her favorite purple dress, the one that matched her hearing aids. "Daddy, Mrs. Rodriguez from my class called Mommy last night. She wants to invite me to Maria's birthday party this weekend." This was significant because Emma hadn't been invited to a classmate's party in months. Jessica's campaign to isolate Emma from her peer group had been working until yesterday's revelations changed everything. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Are you excited?" "Yes, and Derek said he'd help me pick out a present for Maria. He's the best cousin ever." Derek beamed with pride at Emma's declaration. Over the past 18 hours, he had transformed from reluctant participant in his mother's cruelty to Emma's fierce protector and advocate. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Anderson, this is Patricia Wells from Channel 7 News. We'd like to interview you and your family about the disability discrimination case that's been trending on social media." "I'm sorry, what?" "The recording of your family members mocking your daughter's hearing aids and threatening to institutionalize her has been shared over 50,000 times. We'd like to do a follow-up story about the impact of family disability discrimination on children." I declined the interview request, but Patricia Wells's call made me realize how far this story had traveled. Emma's experience was resonating with families across the country who had faced similar challenges from relatives who couldn't accept their children's disabilities. Sarah's phone started ringing. "It's the school principal. Emma's story has inspired them to create a new inclusive education presentation for parents and community members." While Sarah took that call, Emma tugged on my shirt. "Daddy, why do so many people want to talk about my hearing aids now?" "Because you helped teach everyone that children with differences deserve love and respect, not meanness and cruelty." Emma considered this seriously. "Does that mean other kids with hearing aids won't have to be sad like I was yesterday?" "I think you've helped a lot of kids, Emma." She smiled and put her hearing aids in with extra flair. "Good. Being different isn't bad. It's just different." Derek's phone buzzed with a text message. "Uncle Cal, this is from one of Mom's neighbors. Apparently, there are reporters outside her apartment building asking for comment about the child abuse controversy. The phrase child abuse controversy hit me like a cold splash of water. What had started as a family dinner argument had become a public case study in disability, discrimination, and emotional abuse. Aunt Marie arrived at our house carrying grocery bags and wearing a smile I hadn't seen in years. "I brought ingredients for Emma's favorite cookies," she announced. "I figured we should celebrate her courage." "Aunt Marie, how are you holding up with all this attention?" "Cal, I've spent 70 years watching your father bully and intimidate everyone around him. Yesterday was the first time anyone ever stood up to him and held him accountable for his cruelty. I'm not holding up, I'm celebrating." She hugged Emma tightly. "Oh, sweetheart, you've helped a lot of people find the courage to speak up against meanness. That's a very important thing you've done." Emma's teacher arrived for our meeting, but she wasn't alone. She was accompanied by the district's special education coordinator and a representative from the state disability rights organization. "Mr. and Mrs. Anderson," the coordinator began, "Emma's story has highlighted some gaps in our family education programs. We'd like to use this experience to create better resources for families dealing with disability acceptance issues. You want to use Emma's situation as a teaching tool. With your permission, yes. But more importantly, we want to make sure Emma knows she has an entire community supporting her." Emma's teacher knelt down to Emma's level. "Emma, would you like to help us teach other families about how to be kind to children who are different?" Emma nodded enthusiastically. "Can we teach them that hearing aids are helpful, not weird?" "Absolutely." As the meeting continued, I realized that Emma's traumatic experience was transforming into something powerful and positive. Her resilience in the face of family cruelty was inspiring systemic changes that would protect other children facing similar situations. Derek's phone buzzed again. Uncle Cal Grandpa Thomas just posted on Facebook asking people to stop harassing him about a private family matter. How's that going for him? Derek scrolled through the comments. Not well. People are pointing out that emotionally abusing disabled children isn't a private matter. Someone shared statistics about how family rejection impacts disabled children's mental health. Thomas's attempt to frame this as a privacy issue rather than an abuse issue was backfiring spectacularly. The community was making it clear that protecting vulnerable children took precedence over protecting adults who chose to harm them. Sarah finished her conversation with the school district and joined us in the living room. They want to name the new anti-bullying program after Emma. The Emma Anderson Inclusion Initiative. Emma's eyes widened. They want to name something after me. Because you were brave enough to keep wearing your hearing aids even when mean people tried to make you feel bad about them, Sarah explained. Emma stood up and marched to where Derek was sitting. Derek, will you help me make a speech about being kind to different kids? I would be honored to help you, Emma. As I watched my daughter transform her painful experience into advocacy for other children, I realized that Thomas and Jessica's cruelty had inadvertently created something beautiful. Emma's story was becoming a catalyst for change, protection, and understanding. The justice wasn't just in the social consequences Thomas and Jessica faced for their behavior. The real justice was in Emma's transformation from victim to advocate, and in the community's rally around protecting vulnerable children from family discrimination. 6 months after that terrible Sunday dinner, I'm sitting in the audience at Lincoln Elementary School's auditorium, watching my 9-year-old daughter address a crowd of 300 parents, teachers, and community leaders about inclusion and acceptance. Her bright purple hearing aids catch the stage lights as she speaks confidently into the microphone. Being different isn't scary, Emma tells the audience. What's scary is when people who are supposed to love you try to make you feel bad about being different. But when people choose to understand and help instead of being mean, that's when different becomes beautiful. The standing ovation lasts for 5 full minutes. Derek, now studying special education at the community college, beams with pride from his seat next to Aunt Marie. Sarah wipes tears from her eyes as she watches our daughter's transformation from victim to advocate reach its culmination. Thomas and Jessica are not in the audience. They wouldn't be welcome even if they wanted to attend. The consequences of their cruelty have been swift and permanent. Thomas lost his position with the Veterans Organization and resigned from the neighborhood association under pressure. Jessica's real estate career never recovered from the viral recording. She moved to another state last month, unable to rebuild her professional reputation in a community that had heard her mock a disabled child. Derek chose to stay with us rather than follow his mother. He's become Emma's fiercest protector and closest confidant. His own transformation from reluctant participant in cruelty to passionate advocate for inclusion has been remarkable to witness. Uncle Cal, he told me recently, watching Emma's courage taught me that being a good person sometimes means disappointing bad people. Aunt Marie moved into a senior living community where she volunteers teaching literacy to children with learning disabilities. She often says that standing up to Thomas for the first time at age 70 was the most liberating moment of her life. I spent decades enabling his cruelty by staying silent, she confided. Emma's courage shamed me into finding my own. The Emma Anderson Inclusion Initiative has become a model program that other school districts are adopting. Emma serves as the student ambassador, speaking to classes about disability awareness and the importance of family acceptance. Her confidence and wisdom continue to amaze everyone who meets her. But the most profound change has been in our family dynamic. Sarah and I discovered strengths in ourselves we didn't know existed. The crisis forced us to clarify our values and commit fully to protecting Emma's well-being above all other considerations. "You know what I learned," Sarah said to me last week. "Sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones you need protection from the most." Emma's relationship with her hearing aids has evolved too. What once felt like medical devices she needed to tolerate have become symbols of her resilience and advocacy. She decorates them seasonally now. Halloween pumpkins, Christmas snowflakes, spring flowers. Other children at school ask if they can try on hearing aids like Emma's. "They make me special, in a good way," Emma explained to a group of kindergartners last month. "They help me hear all the love around me." The recording that started this transformation continues to be shared in parenting groups and disability advocacy circles. It serves as a powerful example of how family members can either support or systematically undermine a disabled child's confidence and social development. I receive messages regularly from parents who say, "Emma's story gave them courage to set boundaries with relatives who couldn't accept their children's disabilities." Some have shared their own recordings of family members making cruel comments about their children's differences. Thomas made one attempt at reconciliation through a letter delivered by certified mail 3 months ago. It was a masterpiece of manipulation disguised as apology. He claimed his comments were taken out of context, that he had always loved Emma despite her challenges, and that family forgiveness was more important than holding grudges. I shared the letter with Emma, who read it carefully with the serious expression she wore when concentrating. "Daddy, he says he's sorry, but he doesn't say what he's sorry for. He still thinks my hearing aids are challenges instead of helpers." Her wisdom continues to astound me. Even at 9 years old, Emma could see through Thomas's attempt to reconcile without accepting responsibility or changing his fundamental beliefs about her worth. I wrote back a simple response. "Emma is not damaged goods who needs fixing. She is a perfect child who needs hearing aids. Until you can understand that distinction, you have no place in her life." Jessica has made no attempt at contact. Derek occasionally receives guilt-laden messages about how her life has been ruined by our overreaction to her innocent comments. She has never acknowledged the cruelty of her actions or expressed genuine remorse for the pain she caused Emma. "Mom still doesn't understand what she did wrong," Derek told us sadly. She thinks she's the victim in all this. The ripple effects continue to spread in positive directions. Mrs. Patterson organized a neighborhood support group for families with disabled children. The local library created a dedicated section for books about disability acceptance and inclusion. Emma's story inspired the city council to pass new anti-discrimination ordinances specifically protecting disabled children from harassment. But the most meaningful change is the simplest one. Emma wakes up every morning excited about her day. She has friends who think her hearing aids are interesting rather than weird. She has teachers who see her abilities rather than her limitations. She has family members who celebrate her differences rather than trying to minimize them. Daddy. She said to me yesterday while we worked on homework together, "I'm glad the mean people left our family. Now there's more room for love." That simple observation captures the profound truth we learned through this painful experience. Sometimes protecting the people you love means disappointing the people who claim to love you. Sometimes choosing kindness means rejecting cruelty even when that cruelty comes from family. Emma taught us that real family bonds are built on acceptance, not obligation. That true strength comes from protecting vulnerability, not exploiting it. That courage isn't the absence of fear, but choosing love, despite fear. The hearing aids that Thomas and Jessica saw as symbols of deficiency became symbols of resilience. The differences they tried to shame became sources of pride. The child they wanted to hide became an advocate for inclusion and acceptance. Our family emerged from this crisis stronger, closer, and more committed to our values than ever before. We learned that sometimes the greatest gift you can give a child is the knowledge that their parents will always choose their well-being over social harmony. Emma still wears her bright purple hearing aids with pride. She still speaks up for other children who face discrimination for being different. She still believes that being different is beautiful, not shameful. And every night when I tuck her into bed, she reminds me that her hearing aids help her hear all the love surrounding her. That love comes from family members who choose to see her perfection rather than her differences. From teachers who celebrate her abilities rather than focusing on her limitations. From friends who include her because she enriches their lives rather than despite her disability. The mean people who wanted to diminish her light are gone from our lives. In their absence, Emma's radiance shines even brighter. Sometimes the most profound act of love is simply creating space for a child to be exactly who they are, hearing aids and all. Have you ever had to choose between protecting someone you love and keeping peace with family members who couldn't accept them? How do you teach children to stand up for themselves and others who face discrimination for being different? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe for more real-life stories about family courage and resilience, and share this with other parents who might need to hear Emma's message of hope and acceptance. Thank you for listening to our story, and remember, the greatest gift we can give our children is the unwavering knowledge that they are loved exactly as they are.